The Sahara Desert held secrets buried beneath its endless waves of sand, secrets that spanned not just Earth's history, but the cosmos itself. As the scorching sun beat down on the archaeological dig site, James Harrison wiped the sweat from his brow and carefully brushed away centuries of accumulated sand from what appeared to be a metallic surface unlike anything he'd ever encountered. "Professor Harrison," called out one of his graduate students, excitement evident in her voice. "The energy readings are off the scale." James straightened up, his joints protesting after hours of careful excavation. At 42, he wasn't as spry as he'd been when he first started chasing ancient mysteries across the world's deserts, but his passion remained undimmed. He made his way to the monitoring station where Diane Rogers, his most promising student, was staring at readings that shouldn't have been possible. "That can't be right," he muttered, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. The equipment was detecting energy signatures that dwarfed anything naturally occurring on Earth. More bizarrely, they seemed to be increasing with each passing hour. 200,000 miles above Earth's surface, Queen Valora of the Astrian Empire stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Stellar Crown, her silver armor gleaming under the starship's lights. Her deep purple skin and luminescent white hair marked her as royalty among her people, but it was the battle scars visible on her exposed arms that had earned her the true respect of her warriors. "The signal is unprecedented, Your Majesty," reported Commander Thex, his holographic display showing a pulsing point of light emanating from Earth's northern African region. "It bears similarities to the energy signatures in the ancient texts." Valora's golden eyes narrowed as she studied the display. For centuries, her people had searched for traces of their ancestors' lost technology that could save their civilization from its looming energy crisis. That the signal would come from Earth, a planet largely ignored by the galactic community, was unexpected. "Prepare a small expedition team," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of generations of leadership. "I will lead this investigation personally." "Your Majesty," Thex protested, "the protocols for contact with developing worlds will be observed," Valora finished firmly. "But this is too important to delegate. Our people's future may depend on what we find there." Back on Earth, James was documenting the strange markings that covered the exposed portion of the metallic surface when the first tremors began. At first, he mistook them for an earthquake, but the pattern was too regular, too deliberate. The sand around the dig site began to shift, revealing more of the structure beneath, a structure that was beginning to glow with an inner light. "Everyone, clear the area," James shouted, helping Diane gather their most essential equipment. The rest of the team scrambled to safety as the ground continued to shake. The night sky above the desert suddenly illuminated with a cascade of lights that couldn't be explained by any natural phenomenon. James stood transfixed as what appeared to be a shaft of pure energy descended from the heavens, touching down a mere 100 meters from their dig site. As the light faded, James found himself face to face with beings that could only be described as alien, led by a towering figure whose presence commanded attention. Queen Valora stepped forward, her translator device already analyzing the local language. "I am Valora, Queen of the Astrian Empire," she announced, her words automatically converting to perfect English. "And you have uncovered something that belongs to both our people's histories." James Harrison, archaeologist and lifelong skeptic, realized that everything he thought he knew about human history was about to change. The mystery in the desert was just the beginning of a story that would reshape two civilizations, and his own life, forever. A distant explosion interrupted the moment, followed by the unmistakable sound of military helicopters approaching. The peaceful first contact was about to become considerably more complicated. "It seems," Valora said with a hint of resignation, "that we have much to discuss, and very little time in which to do it." The military helicopters circled overhead like predatory birds, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. James Harrison knew they had minutes, perhaps seconds, before the situation spiraled out of control. He stepped forward, positioning himself between the approaching forces and Queen Valora's group. "Your Majesty," he said quickly, I have contacts in the government. If you trust me, I might be able to prevent this from becoming an international incident." Valora studied him with those striking golden eyes. In her centuries of rule, she had learned to read intent across dozens of species. The human before her radiated sincerity, and something else that intrigued her on a personal level she hadn't expected. "Commander Thex," she said without taking her eyes off James, "engage the cloaking field. Limited radius." The air shimmered around them, and James felt a slight tingle as the field encompassed their small group. The helicopter's searchlights passed over them as if they weren't there. "A temporary solution," Valora said. "Explain your plan, Professor Harrison." James pulled out his phone, quickly dialing a number he'd hoped never to use. "Dr. Roswell? Remember that favor you owe me from the Gobi expedition? I need to call it in. Now." 20 minutes later, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the dig site. A woman in her 60s stepped out, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. Dr. Eleanor Roswell, head of the Department of Extraterrestrial Research and Defense, surveyed the scene with sharp green eyes. "Harrison," she said dryly, "when you discover alien life, you're supposed to call us first, not after the Air Force is already scrambled." "Technically, they discovered us," James replied, gesturing to Valora and her team as they lowered the cloaking field. Dr. Roswell's composure cracked for just a moment as she took in the regal alien queen and her warriors. "Well," she said after a pause, "this complicates things." Over the next few hours, a tentative agreement was reached. The dig site would be designated a joint humanitarian research zone, with both James's team and Valoris experts working together to unlock its secrets. The military presence would be maintained at a distance, under the guise of a routine training exercise. "Your government is remarkably adaptable," Valora commented as they walked the perimeter of the site. The first rays of dawn were painting the desert in shades of gold and rose. "Dr. Roswell understands the importance of discretion," James replied. "And the potential benefits of cooperation. Though I suspect having an energy crisis of our own helps align our interests." Valora stopped walking, turning to face him. "You're very perceptive, Professor." "Yes, both our civilizations face similar challenges. Perhaps that's why the artifact has chosen to reveal itself now." James raised an eyebrow. "You believe it's conscious?" "The technology of the ancestors was far beyond even what my people have achieved," Valora explained. "Their artifacts often display a level of awareness that borders on sentience." The dig site seemed to pulse in response to her words, the buried structure emitting a soft glow that rippled through the sand like waves on water. James found himself mesmerized, not just by the phenomenon, but by the way it illuminated Valora's features. "You're staring, Professor," she said, a slight smile playing at her lips. James felt heat rise to his cheeks that had nothing to do with the desert sun. "I'm an archaeologist. Observation is my job." "Indeed." Valora's expression grew serious. "And what do you observe about our current situation?" Before James could respond, Commander Thex approached rapidly, his usually stoic expression troubled. "Your Majesty, we're detecting multiple ships entering the solar system. They're not responding to identification requests." Valora's posture shifted instantly from diplomatic to martial. "Pirates or scavengers?" "Worse," Thex replied grimly. "The energy signature matches Imperial vessels. It seems your brother has learned of our discovery." James watched as Valora's expression hardened into one of cold fury. "Prince Darien was explicitly forbidden from leaving the home system while I was away." "Your brother?" James asked, sensing there was much more to the story. "Yes," Valora said grimly. "My younger brother, who has spent the last century trying to prove I'm unfit to rule. And now he's violated multiple laws to follow us here, which means he knows something about this artifact that we don't." The buried structure's glow intensified, as if responding to the mounting tension. James placed a hand on its surface and felt a distinct vibration, like a heartbeat growing stronger. "Whatever your brother knows," he said, "we need to find out quickly. Because I don't think this artifact is just waking up, I think it's preparing for something." Valora placed her hand next to his on the structure, and James felt an electric current pass between them at the point where their fingers nearly touched. The artifact's pulsing synchronized with their heartbeats for a moment, and both human and alien queen shared a look of startled recognition. "Commander," Valora said, her eyes still locked with James's, "begin emergency excavation procedures. Whatever this artifact is, we need to reach its core before my brother's ships arrive." As Thex hurried off to relay orders, Dr. Roswell approached with a tablet displaying satellite data. "We've got another problem," she announced. "That energy pulse from earlier? It didn't just attract your brother's attention. Every major government on Earth registered it. We've got Chinese satellites changing orbit, Russian ships changing course, and about a dozen other countries mobilizing resources toward North Africa." James looked at Valora, seeing his own concern reflected in her golden eyes. They had perhaps hours before the situation exploded into a potential international, and interstellar, crisis. "The next few hours will determine the fate of both our peoples," Valora said softly. "Are you prepared for what that might mean, Professor?" James thought of all the years he'd spent searching for evidence of advanced ancient civilizations, of the ridicule he'd endured from his peers. Now he stood on the brink of the greatest discovery in human history, beside an alien queen who stirred feelings in him he hadn't expected. "I've spent my life preparing for this," he replied. "Though I admit, the company is better than I imagined." A ghost of a smile touched Valora's lips before she resumed her regal bearing. "Then let us hope we can uncover the artifact's secrets before those who would misuse them arrive." "Commander Thex." "Yes, Your Majesty." "Begin the deep scan sequence. Professor Harrison's team will assist. We have 6 hours before my brother's ships arrive, and I intend to be ready for them." As the combined human and Astrian teams rushed to implement their queen's orders, James couldn't help but wonder what other secrets lay buried beneath the desert sands, and what price they might all pay for uncovering them. The desert wind howled across the excavation site as massive Astrian drilling equipment cut through layers of ancient sand and stone. James Harrison stood beside Queen Valora at the command center, watching holographic displays of their progress. The artifact's energy signature grew stronger with each passing minute, its pulses now visible as waves of blue light rippling through the sand. 3 hours until Prince Darian's ships enter Earth's atmosphere, Commander Thex reported, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls. And Dr. Roswell reports that Chinese satellites will be in position within 2. "Show me the latest scan results," Valora commanded. A three-dimensional image materialized before them, revealing the true scale of what lay beneath the sand. The structure wasn't just a building or a power source, it was an entire complex, stretching for kilometers in every direction. "This architecture," James said, studying the intricate patterns, "it's neither human nor Astrian, is it?" Valora shook her head, her white hair catching the light of the holograms. "No. This predates even our earliest records. The ancestors, as we call them, vanished millions of years ago, leaving only fragments of their technology scattered across the galaxy." A sudden tremor shook the command center. On the displays, the artifact's energy readings spiked dramatically. James steadied himself against the console, accidentally brushing against Valora's arm. The contact sent an unexpected surge of energy through them both, and the artifact responded with a pulse of brilliant light. "Fascinating," came a new voice. Dr. Roswell emerged from the shadows of the command center, her eyes fixed on the readings. "The artifact responds to your combined presence. Almost as if it was waiting for us," James finished. "Not just humans or Astrians, but both together." Before anyone could respond, alarms blared across the command center. Commander Thex's expression darkened as he checked the readings. Multiple impacts detected in orbit. Prince Darian's forces are engaging Earth's satellites. That fool, Valora snarled. He'll start an interstellar war. She turned to Dr. Roswell. Contact your superiors. Tell them not to retaliate. Those ships are acting without Imperial authority. It may be too late for that, Roswell replied grimly, checking her tablet. Russian and Chinese forces are already launching countermeasures. The Americans are mobilizing their space force. Another tremor rocked the site, stronger this time. But this wasn't from the fighting above, it came from below. The artifact's surface began to crack, golden light spilling through the fissures. Everyone clear the excavation zone. James shouted, but Valora grabbed his arm. No, she said firmly. Look at the energy patterns. It's not breaking apart, it's transforming. The ground beneath their feet shifted as ancient machinery awakened. Sections of the structure began to rise from the sand, panels sliding apart to reveal chambers that hadn't seen light in millions of years. And at the center, a column of pure energy shot skyward, parting the clouds above. The ancestors' records spoke of this, Valora breathed. The nexus points, sites of power that could reshape reality itself. James stared in awe as the facility continued to transform around them. But why now? After all these millions of years? Because, came a smooth, cultured voice, it required the right combination of elements. A shimmer of light revealed a tall, male Astrian materializing in the command center, flanked by armed guards. His resemblance to Valora was clear, though his bearing was more calculated than regal. Darian, Valora said coldly. Your presence on Earth violates at least 6 imperial laws. Laws you created, dear sister, Prince Darian replied with a sharp smile. Laws that have held our people back from claiming our rightful place as inheritors of the ancestors' power. Your Highness, James stepped forward, trying to diffuse the tension. Whatever you believe this facility can do, it's clearly meant to be understood and used by both our species together. Darian's golden eyes flicked to James with casual disdain. Ah yes, the human archaeologist. I wondered what drew my sister to personally lead this expedition. His smile turned cruel. Always had a weakness for primitive species, haven't you, Valora? Enough. Valora's voice cracked like thunder. You endanger both our peoples with your arrogance. Stand down, or I will remove you by force. The artifact pulsed again, stronger than ever. The energy column reaching into the sky began to spiral, forming patterns that seemed to bend space itself. I think not, Darian replied. He raised his hand, revealing an ancient device clutched in his fingers. You see, unlike you, I didn't waste time studying the ancestors' texts for their wisdom. I searched for their weapons. The device glowed with the same energy as the facility, creating a feedback loop that made reality itself seem to shudder. James felt something fundamental shifting in the air around them, like the universe was holding its breath. Warning, Commander Thex called out. Dimensional stability compromised. The nexus is becoming unstable. Darian, you fool, Valora shouted over the rising hum of power. You'll tear apart the fabric of space-time. But her brother's eyes were wild with the power coursing through him. I'll remake it. As the ancestors did. As was our destiny. James looked at the readings, his archaeological training combining with what he'd learned of Astrian technology. A pattern emerged, not of destruction, but of connection. Valora, he called out. The markings we found, the ones that responded to both of us, they're not about power, they're about balance. Understanding dawned in Valora's eyes. Without hesitation, she reached out and took James's hand. The contact sent a surge of energy through them both, resonating with the artifact's frequency. The facility's light changed from chaos to harmony, the spiral of power above them stabilizing into a perfect helix. No. Darien raised the ancient weapon, but it was too late. The combined energy of human and Astrian, channeled through the facility's ancient machines, created a feedback loop that shorted out his device. The prince screamed as millions of years of stored power coursed through him, transforming him into pure energy that was absorbed into the facility itself. As the light faded, James and Valora found themselves standing in a transformed command center. The walls now gleamed with living metal, covered in patterns that were neither human nor Astrian, but something far older and wiser. The ancestors, Valora said softly, reading the newly revealed text, they didn't vanish. They evolved. And they left these facilities not as weapons, but as guideposts, waiting for species to learn to work together before unlocking their true power. A power source that requires cooperation, James mused. That's one way to encourage peaceful relations between civilizations. Valora's fingers were still intertwined with his, neither of them wanting to break the connection. It seems, Professor Harrison, that we have much to learn from each other. Above them, the helix of energy continued to pulse, not with destruction, but with promise. The first step of a journey that would change both their worlds forever. Commander Thex cleared his throat. Your Majesty, Earth's governments are requesting an explanation for the light show. And, the Imperial Council is demanding an immediate report. Valora and James shared a look that contained volumes. The real work, and perhaps the real challenges, were just beginning. Tell them, Valora said, her voice carrying the weight of history and hope, that we have found something far more valuable than a weapon or a power source. We have found our future. The following days brought a whirlwind of activity to the desert facility. Representatives from Earth's major powers converged on the site, while Astrian diplomats arrived in sleek ships that hung in the sky like silver stars. The ancient complex had become the center of a new era in human-alien relations, though not everyone was happy about this development. James stood at the newly revealed central chamber, documenting the living metal walls that seemed to shift and change with each passing hour. The facility was gradually revealing its secrets, but only to those who approached with peaceful intent. He'd seen more than one scientist storm out in frustration when their aggressive attempts to probe its defenses were gently but firmly rebuffed. The morning briefing is about to start, Valora's voice came from behind him. She'd traded her battle armor for more diplomatic attire, though she still carried herself with a warrior's grace. The Imperial Council is particularly interested in your latest findings. James turned, unable to keep from smiling at her presence. Their connection had only grown stronger since the confrontation with Darien, though both were careful to maintain professional distance during official functions. They won't like what I have to say. The facility's making it pretty clear, it won't be controlled or weaponized by any single species. That won't stop some from trying, Valora replied grimly. My brother's supporters in the Imperial Court are already spinning theories about how his sacrifice proves Astrian supremacy. Before James could respond, Dr. Roswell burst into the chamber, her usual composure shattered. We have a problem. A big one. The central holographic display activated, showing multiple news feeds from around the world. Headlines screamed about alien invasions and secret weapons. Shaky smartphone footage showed parts of the facility's activation sequence, with conspiracy theories already sprouting in the comments. Someone leaked footage of the incident with Darien, Roswell explained. And they've edited it to make it look like an attempted alien takeover that was only stopped by human intervention. Let me guess, Valora said, her eyes narrowing. My brother's supporters? No, James replied, studying the footage. This is something else. Look at the timestamps, these were posted from multiple locations simultaneously. This was coordinated. Commander Thex materialized through a portal, his expression grave. Your Majesty, we've detected unauthorized access attempts to the facility's outer chambers. Someone with both human and Astrian security codes is trying to breach the containment protocols. Impossible, Valora snapped. Those codes are known only to, she stopped, realization dawning in her eyes. The diplomatic delegation. James quickly pulled up the facility's security feeds on his tablet. There. Section 7. That's Ambassador Renix from your court, and, is that General Matthews from the UN Security Council? They watched as the unlikely pair worked to override a security terminal, their movements suggesting long familiarity with working together. The facility's walls pulsed with warning lights, but the infiltrators seemed prepared for its defenses. A conspiracy spanning both our species, Valora said, her voice cold with fury. How long have they been planning this? Long enough to plant agents in both governments, Roswell replied. The leaked footage is just the start. They're trying to trigger a panic, force both sides to try to seize the facility for security reasons. The facility shuddered, its ancient systems registering the attack on its integrity. James felt the living metal beneath his feet trembling, like a nervous animal sensing danger. We need to stop them, he said. Not just the infiltrators, but the whole conspiracy. If either side tries to claim the facility by force, it will defend itself, Valora finished. And that level of power, released destructively instead of harmoniously, would make my brother's attempt look like a firecracker, Commander Thex added grimly. James turned to Dr. Roswell. How long until the leaked footage causes public panic? Hours at most. It's already trending worldwide. Military forces on both sides are being mobilized, officially as a precautionary measure. Valora's golden eyes met James's brown ones, and in that moment, they both knew what had to be done. The facility responds to our combined presence, she said. If we could trigger a full activation. Show everyone the truth, James nodded. Not just about the facility, but about what it represents, the potential when species work together instead of against each other. It's risky, Thex warned. A full activation could be devastating if not properly controlled. Then we'll just have to control it properly, James replied with a slight smile. Good thing we've had some practice. Valora turned to Roswell. Can you get us global coverage? Every network, every feed? Give me 10 minutes and diplomatic authorization to override broadcast protocols. Commander, Valora addressed Thex, seal off Section 7. Don't engage the infiltrators directly, let them think they're succeeding until we're ready. And us? James asked, though he already knew the answer. Valora held out her hand, her expression both regal and tender. We show them what real power looks like, not the power to destroy or dominate, but the power to unite and create. James took her hand, feeling the now familiar surge of energy between them. The facility responded instantly, the living metal walls beginning to pulse with golden light. In Section 7, Ambassador Renix and General Matthews looked up in alarm as their carefully laid plans began to unravel. Ready to make history, Your Majesty? James asked. Valora's answering smile contained all the warmth of desert suns. My dear Professor, I believe we already have. The facility's light grew brighter, embracing them in its ancient power as they prepared to show both their worlds what was possible when barriers fell and hearts opened. Above them, the helix of energy began to spin, reaching toward the stars with a message of hope that would change everything. The ancient facility blazed like a second sun in the heart of the Sahara, its energy signature visible from space. Inside the central chamber, James and Valora stood at the nexus point, their joined hands channeling power through systems that had slept for millions of years. Dr. Roswell's voice came through the comm system, tense but controlled. Global broadcast networks are ready. Whatever you're going to do, do it now. Military forces are 30 minutes out from multiple directions. James looked at Valora, seeing his own determination reflected in her golden eyes. The facility's living metal walls pulsed in sync with their heartbeats, ancient machinery awakening to their combined presence. In Section 7, the conspirators' attempts to breach the security systems grew more desperate as their plans unraveled. "Your Majesty," Commander Thex reported, "Ambassador Renix is attempting to contact the Imperial fleet. General Matthews is on a secure line with military commands worldwide." "Let them," Valora said firmly. "Let everyone see what happens next." James placed his free hand on the central control panel, its surface warming beneath his touch. "The ancestors didn't just leave us technology," he said. "They left us a choice: continue fighting over power, or learn to share it." The facility's response was immediate. The living metal beneath their feet began to shift and flow, forming new patterns that spiraled outward from their position. The helix of energy above the complex expanded, its light taking on colors human eyes had never seen before. Through the facility's sensors, they could see Ambassador Renix and General Matthews staring in shock as their security overrides were effortlessly absorbed and transformed by the ancient systems. But more importantly, they could feel the facility's true purpose awakening. "It's not just a power source," Valora breathed in wonder. "It's a bridge." The chamber filled with holographic displays, showing not just Earth and the Astrian Empire, but dozens of other worlds scattered across the galaxy. Each one hosted its own facility, dormant but waiting for species to prove themselves worthy of its gifts. A network, James realized. The ancestors created a network spanning the entire galaxy. Through the global broadcast, billions watched as the facility revealed its true nature. The living metal walls became transparent, showing the intricate machinery within, technology that defied both human and Astrian understanding. But more importantly, it showed how that technology could only be accessed through cooperation. "This is what my brother never understood," Valora said, her voice carrying to all who watched. "True power isn't about dominance. It's about connection." In Section 7, the conspirators' weapons fell useless from their hands as the facility's energy field gently but firmly contained them. Similar scenes played out in government offices and military installations around the world as the truth became undeniable: any attempt to seize or weaponize the facility's power would be futile. The holographic displays shifted, showing simulations of what the network could achieve. Clean, unlimited energy for both civilizations. Transportation systems that could bridge the gulf between stars. Medical technologies that could end disease and extend life. But each advancement came with the same requirement: it had to be shared, never hoarded or used against others. A gift, James addressed the watching billions, but also a challenge. Can we put aside our fears and divisions? Can we prove ourselves worthy of what the ancestors left us? The facility's power surged through them both, and for a moment, James and Valora could see through time itself. They saw the countless civilizations that had come before, each facing this same choice. Some had failed, turning away from cooperation in favor of conflict. But others had succeeded, ascending to levels of existence their descendants could barely imagine. "We stand at a crossroads," Valora declared, her voice regal yet warm. "Not just humans and Astrians, but all sentient beings. We can cling to our separate paths, or we can walk forward together." The facility's light reached its peak, the helix above now visible from every corner of Earth. In orbit, soldiers on both sides lowered their weapons in awe. In the Imperial Palace on the Astrian homeworld, the Council watched in stunned silence as centuries of assumptions about their own superiority crumbled. "The choice is yours," James and Valora spoke in unison, their voices carrying the weight of millions of years of waiting. "But know this: the universe is far grander than our divisions, far more wondrous than our fears would let us believe." The facility's power began to stabilize, settling into a steady rhythm that would maintain itself indefinitely. The immediate crisis was over, but the real work was just beginning. In Section 7, Ambassador Renix and General Matthews were already being taken into custody, the first of many conspirators who would face justice in both human and Astrian courts. Dr. Roswell's voice came through the comm again, this time with a note of amazement. "We're getting responses from every major government and the Imperial Council. They're requesting immediate diplomatic talks. Real ones this time." Commander Thex added, "The Imperial fleet is standing down. Earth's military forces are pulling back. It seems your demonstration was convincing." James looked at Valora, still holding her hand as the facility's light bathed them both. "I suppose this means our work here is just beginning." Valora's smile held both wisdom and warmth. "Our peoples have much to learn from each other. And perhaps—" she squeezed his hand gently, "some of us have already started learning." The desert sun rose over a changed world, its light mingling with the facility's eternal glow. In the central chamber, a human archaeologist and an alien queen stood together, their unique bond a living symbol of what was possible when ancient barriers fell away. "Together?" James asked, though it wasn't really a question anymore. "Together," Valora confirmed, her golden eyes shining with the light of new possibilities. "After all, we have two worlds to unite, a galaxy to explore, and a future to build." Above them, the helix of energy continued its eternal dance, a beacon of hope visible from Earth and space alike. The ancestors' greatest gift wasn't the technology they'd left behind, but the truth it revealed, that the greatest power in the universe wasn't found in weapons or control, but in the simple courage to reach across the void and take another's hand. In the endless desert sands, watched by billions across two worlds, a new chapter in the story of civilization had begun. And this time, no one would have to write it alone.